the small town of Riverbrook, what seemed like a harmless act of cruelty sparked an unforeseen revolution. When officers Barnes and Kyle targeted a homeless black veteran right inside the Red Rail diner, they had no idea that Eli Turner, the man they chose to harass, had ties reaching all the way to the Pentagon. A single call from a brave waitress set off a chain of events that would expose a nationwide conspiracy against homeless veterans, trigger the downfall of corrupt police departments across the country, and shake seemingly untouchable communities to their core. The discarded military ID looked like nothing more than a worthless scrap. But for them, it was a grave mistake. They weren't just threatening a nameless, faceless man. They were waking a warrior, someone who had survived battles far beyond anything they could ever comprehend. Before we continue, where are you watching this story from? Drop a comment below. And if you're finding this story compelling, make sure to follow the channel. Tomorrow's special episode is one you won't want to miss. Snow fell gently like feathers over the quiet streets of Riverbrook, layering rooftops and sidewalks in a clean, wintry white. People hurried along, bracing against the biting cold, shoulders hunched, hands clutched tightly around their coats. Among them, Eli Turner walked with a calm, steady stride, seemingly untouched by the freezing wind, his worn military coat draped over broad shoulders, frayed and faded but meticulously clean. A patch of the American flag, dulled by time, clung to the sleeve like a relic from years of service. His pants were frayed at the hems, and his military boots cracked and worn down. Yet in every step, every glance, there was a sense of dignity and pride that made people turn and look. His breath came out in puffs of white mist, carried by whispered words to a past that never truly left. Scan exits, identify threats, stay alert at all times. These repeated lines weren't just habit, they were ritual, remnants of a soldier's life, keeping his mind sharp in a world that had grown cold. Up ahead, the flickering neon sign of the Red Rail diner marked a refuge open through the night. Through the foggy window, Eli saw the warm lights and silhouettes of people enjoying hot meals. His stomach twisted with hunger. His monthly veterans benefit check had arrived just the day before. Not much, but enough for a decent meal. Before stepping inside, he brushed the snow off his shoulders and squared his posture. It had been 3 days since he last set foot in a building. 3 days buried in the abandoned train station on the edge of town, warmed only by old newspapers and heated memories of desert air. The bell above the door jingled as Eli stepped in. The warmth and smell of coffee and grilled meat jolted his senses awake. He closed his eyes and inhaled deeply, trying to lock in that moment. But when he opened them, the diner's atmosphere had turned still. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Forks froze mid-air. Eyes landed on him, then quickly looked away. A young mother pulled her child closer. An old man subtly slid his wallet deeper into his coat pocket. Now what do you think? What makes a community turn so cold toward a man simply seeking a warm meal? Share your thoughts, because even the smallest moments can spark powerful conversations. Eli was used to that look, those suspicious eyes, those sudden silences when he entered a public place. He picked a solo seat at the bar, where he could clearly watch both the main entrance and the door to the kitchen. Old habits of a man who had survived battlefields. "Just passing through looking for something warm," he mumbled, to no one in particular, as if talking to himself. Rachel Miller, the Red Rail waitress for nearly 2 years, was juggling shifts and saving up for community college. Off the clock, she cared for her younger brother, a first-year cadet at the police academy. At just 23, Rachel had already learned what exhaustion felt like, what sacrifice meant, and how helpless it was to see lives unravel without being able to do much. But something about the man's eyes made her pause. They weren't the eyes of someone lost. They were sharp, quiet, carrying a depth of experience well beyond his years. She glanced toward the corner booth, where Officers Barnes and Kyle were sipping coffee, like they did every Tuesday night, on the dot, like clockwork. Barnes met Rachel's eyes, raised an eyebrow, then subtly nodded toward Eli, a silent signal. Rachel inhaled, walked up to the counter. "What can I get you?" she asked, gently sliding the menu toward him. "A black coffee, if it's not too much trouble," Eli replied. His voice was deep, warm, and unexpectedly calm. "And the daily special, if it's still available. No sweetheart, no darlin', like the regulars often said. Just Miss." A simple, respectful tone that made Rachel smile instinctively as she poured the coffee. "Meatloaf with mashed potatoes and gravy. Comes with green beans and a dinner roll," she said. "Perfect," Eli nodded. "Been a while since I've had a home-cooked meal." From the corner booth, snickering erupted. Kyle said loudly, "Digging through trash doesn't count as dining out, does it?" Barnes chuckled and added, "Better double-check the silverware, Rachel." Then, with a bite of venom, "And maybe check the restroom after he leaves. These types love to shoot up when they find someplace warm." Eli didn't turn. His eyes stayed fixed on his coffee cup, expression unchanged, just a subtle tightening at the corner of his eye. Rachel flushed with embarrassment, but years of customer service instinct kept her smile in place. "I'll let the kitchen know," she said quietly to Eli, before turning to walk away. "Thank you, miss," Eli replied, his tone steady, like a pillar in the middle of a snowstorm. Kyle stood, stretched dramatically, and swaggered over to the counter. He was in his early 30s, once muscular but now softening with time, always wearing that half-smirk that made Rachel uneasy. Barnes followed, leaner, colder, eyes constantly scanning. "Hey, Rachel," Kyle called out, leaning on the counter and deliberately sitting close to Eli. "How's your little brother doing? Still planning to join the force?" "He's doing fine," Rachel replied, keeping her tone neutral. "Top of his class in marksmanship." "Impressive," Kyle nodded. "We need more like him. People who understand what really keeps a community safe. What do you think? Is safety truly the goal, or just a mask for control?" These veiled jabs weren't just idle banter. They painted a simmering portrait of power, prejudice, and boundaries pushed further each day. Leave a comment. Have you ever witnessed injustice? And if you stayed silent out of fear, would you choose to speak up today? Kyle tilted his head, glancing sideways at Eli's face, then said in an even tone laced with contempt, "You know what this is about, right? Cleaning the streets of threats, junkies, beggars, and all those fake veterans using their service as an excuse to panhandle and hassle decent folks." Eli raised his coffee cup and took a sip. Slowly, calmly, like he was analyzing each word, not just hearing them. Barnes chimed in, dropping onto the other stool beside Eli, officially boxing him in. "You'd be surprised," he said, with a mocking grin, "how many of those homeless heroes never saw a day of combat, but they sure know how to work the system, don't they, Kyle?" "Exactly," Kyle agreed. "A real soldier comes home, finds a job, and contributes. Doesn't live off scraps like these leeches." At that moment, Rachel returned with a steaming plate, her hand trembling slightly as she set it in front of Eli. "Do you two need anything else?" she asked, trying to redirect the situation. "We're good," Kyle replied, casually grabbing the sugar jar. He pulled out a packet and tossed it onto Eli's meatloaf, the little packet landing beside the slice like an invisible slap. "Here you go, buddy. Earn your meal. Dance for it, right?" The room fell stiff with tension. Some customers looked away, uncomfortable. A teenager at a nearby table quietly took out his phone and started recording. Ellie set his coffee cup down gently, as if every motion was deliberate. He picked up the sugar packet between two fingers, turned, and placed it back on the officer's table, precisely, calmly. "My brother and I are still well underway. I earned my dignity in Kandar," he said quietly but clearly. "And I don't need to ask for it from you." The diner froze. Kyle's face turned red. Barnes's hand drifted to his belt, hovering near his holstered sidearm. "You threatening an officer, homeless boy?" Barnes asked, voice soft but deadly. "No, sir," Eli said, turning back to his meal. "I'm just having dinner." Kyle shot up, his chair scraping loudly across the floor. I think you need to leave. You're disturbing the peace. Eli didn't move. I paid for this meal. I have the right to finish it. Barnes stood too, his tone heavier. Or are you refusing a lawful order from law enforcement? Rachel stepped forward, pleading, Please. He's not causing any trouble. He's just— Quiet, Rachel, Barnes snapped, unless you want trouble too. What would your little brother think, finding out his sister's interfering with police work? The words landed like a punch. Rachel froze, face pale. But her hand slipped silently into her apron pocket, where her phone was recording every second. Kyle placed a firm hand on Eli's shoulder and squeezed hard. Get up. Now. Eli remained seated. He looked Kyle straight in the eye. Calm, steady, like a boulder in the middle of a storm. I have the right to finish the meal I paid for? Have you ever seen someone stand alone and hold their dignity against overwhelming pressure? Moments like that can shift entire narratives, sometimes even history. Would you choose silence or action? I haven't broken any laws, Eli said, voice as calm as a frozen lake. Disturbing the peace, disobeying a police order, making threats. Barnes listed off, his voice icy. 3 strikes. You're done, pal. Around the diner, more phones quietly emerged, capturing the growing tension. No one spoke. No one dared intervene. 3 tours in Afghanistan, Eli said, his words like echoes from another time. 2 Purple Hearts, 1 Silver Star. And now I can't even eat dinner in peace in the country I fought to defend. Kyle yanked Eli's arm, nearly pulling him from the stool. Cut the drama, fake hero, he sneered. As the 2 officers began dragging Ellie toward the exit, he glanced back at Rachel. The look in his eyes then was something you'd never forget. Not fear, not anger, just the unwavering steadiness of a man who knew he was being trampled, yet still refused to lose his honor. If anything happens to me, Eli said loudly enough for Rachel to hear, call General Whitaker at the Pentagon. Tell him Eli Turner is in danger. Rachel's eyes widened in shock. The Pentagon? General Whitaker? Was this homeless man delusional, or was he someone real? Barnes burst into laughter, mocking, Yeah, sure. I'll call the president while I'm at it. Let's go, Turner. They dragged him through the diner, Eli's feet barely touching the floor. Yet he didn't resist, didn't beg. He kept his posture upright, his gaze unyielding. Enjoy your meal, folks, Kyle called out as they exited. Just taking out the trash. The door flung open and a blast of icy wind rushed in. Rachel hurried after them, stopping at the threshold. She watched as they shoved Eli against the patrol car, slamming him into the metal harder than necessary. Eli let out a low grunt of pain but stayed silent as they frisked him roughly. A chain around his neck caught on Barnes's watch, causing his military ID to fall into the snow. Kyle intentionally stepped on it, then kicked it aside. Well, he sneered, pushing Eli into the back seat. Doesn't look like much of a hero now, does he? The car door slammed shut. The engine growled to life. The patrol vehicle turned into the snowstorm and disappeared from view. Rachel stood frozen in the cold, wind biting at her face. Then she stepped into the parking lot, knelt down and searched. After a moment, she found the military ID half buried in the snow. The cold metal stung her hand as she brushed away the ice crystals and quietly read the engraved text. Turner, Elijah J., O. Poss Methodist. The phone in her pocket felt heavier than ever. The video was still recording. Rachel's hands trembled as she took it out and stopped the recording. Then, moved by something she couldn't quite explain, she whispered, Please, don't let him be crazy. Back inside the Red Rail diner, Rachel slipped quietly into the staff restroom. Her hands were still shaking. On her phone screen, the Pentagon switchboard number was ready to dial. She stared at it, her heart pounding. This was insane, completely absurd. Call the Pentagon because a homeless man told her to? What would you do in that moment? Trust the desperate last words of a stranger, or ignore them and return to the safety of routine? Every action, no matter how small, can spark a chain of events that rewrites destinies. Rachel knew she could be laughed at, or worse, reprimanded for wasting government time. But Eli's eyes haunted her, that calm, heartbreaking gaze, a quiet strength wrapped in worn clothes. And now, the dog tag in her pocket was a reminder she couldn't ignore. Use it to do it, she whispered to herself, then tapped call. 3 rings. Then a professional woman's voice came through the line. Department of Defense, whom may I direct your call to? Rachel swallowed hard. I need to speak with General Whitaker. It's about Eli Turner. He's in danger. A pause. Please hold. Rachel braced herself for a hang-up or a voicemail prompt. But after several clicks and transfers, a new voice came on the line. This is Colonel Reynolds, General Whitaker's aide. Who am I speaking with? My name is Rachel Miller. I'm calling from Riverbrook. Eli Turner told me to contact General Whitaker if anything happened, and now he's been arrested by the police. I'm afraid they'll hurt him. Another pause, longer this time. Rachel could hear whispers on the other end. Ms. Miller, please hold for General Whitaker. Each second stretched endlessly. Rachel leaned back against the restroom wall, her heart hammering. Was this really happening? Then a deep, authoritative voice filled her ear. This is General Harold Whitaker. What do you know about Sergeant Elijah Turner? In Washington, D.C., inside a wood-paneled office overlooking the Pentagon, retired General Harold Whitaker still sat upright like the soldier he once was. At 72, his hair was white, but his piercing blue eyes remained sharp. He had been reviewing documents for an upcoming Senate Armed Services Committee hearing when the call came in. But at the mention of Eli Turner's name, his entire demeanor shifted, from casual concern to focused urgency. Tell me everything, he commanded, reaching for another phone on his desk. As Rachel recounted everything that had happened at the diner, General Whitaker's jaw clenched. His footsteps echoed heavily across the office as he began to pace. Ms. Miller, you did the right thing. Send that video to me immediately. My aide will text you a secure number. Then I need you to go home and not speak of this to anyone. Understood? Yes, sir, Rachel replied, her voice light with relief, as though a massive weight had just lifted off her chest. But what about Eli? Is he going to be okay? Sergeant Turner is one of the finest soldiers I've ever had the honor of commanding. Whitaker's voice softened slightly. And I won't let anyone harm him. What would you do if you were Rachel in that moment? An ordinary young woman. No power. No rank. Just one right choice. And the instinct to do what's right. Would you make the call? Or wait for someone else to act first? And I always protect my own, General Whitaker said as he ended the call. For a moment afterward he stood still, his gaze piercing through the wooden walls of his office, reaching back across 2 decades. Kandahar, 2003. The heat was oppressive, dust clinging to every surface. Their armored convoy crawled past a small village on the edge of the desert. Intelligence suggested Taliban activity in the area, but it was too quiet. Without warning, the first RPG tore through the lead vehicle. The last in the convoy was hit seconds later. They were trapped under crossfire from rooftops and windows. At the time, Whitaker was still a colonel. Thrown from his Humvee, his leg pinned beneath the burning vehicle, he had ordered a retreat to preserve the unit. But one man refused to obey. "No one gets left behind, sir," Elijah Turner had said, his young face smeared with blood and ash. Under relentless gunfire, Turner led a counterattack, buying just enough time to pull Whitaker from the wreck and carry him to safety. Then he went back and saved 3 more men before the airstrike arrived. Now, in his wood-paneled office, Whitaker picked up a secure phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. "This is General Whitaker. Authentication code Sierra Echo 94 Alpha. An emergency action is required immediately at the Riverbrook Police Department, Heed County, Western Pennsylvania. A decorated veteran is being held under suspicious conditions. I want Defense Department Internal Affairs on site within the hour." Without pause, he made 5 more calls. to the Department of Justice, the Secretary of Defense's office, and an old friend now running the Department of Veterans Affairs. "It's about Eli Turner," he repeated in every conversation. Levers of power began to move, political favors were called in, the gears of a system that had once failed Eli now turned at the highest levels to protect him. Inside a holding cell at Riverbrook PD, Ellie sat on the cold bench, eyes closed, breathing slow and even. A bruise on his side, an accident, courtesy of Barnes's elbow, throbbed, but his mind was elsewhere. He had learned to meditate during recovery at Walter Reed Hospital. Doctors called it PTSD management. For Eli, it was just survival. In his mind, he walked through the familiar halls of a palace in Kandahar, one his unit had once protected. Every corridor, every doorway vivid and intact. When the far door slammed open, he didn't stir. When hurried footsteps approached, he didn't react. Only when the cell door clicked open did Eli lift his head. Standing before him were two individuals in dark suits, one man, one woman. Both held up federal credentials. "Mr. Turner," the woman said, her voice firm but respectful, "you're free to go." Eli studied them for a long moment before slowly rising to his feet. "Faster than I expected," he murmured, his tone unclear if it was sarcastic or simply relieved. "This is Agent Daniels, Defense Department Internal Affairs," the man introduced. "This is Agent Morales. We're here at the direct request of General Harold Whitaker." A faint smile crossed Eli's lips, subtle but enough to reveal a flicker of warmth after a bitter day. "That old man still keeps his word." "Yes, he does," Morales affirmed. "We've spoken with the police chief. You're being released immediately. All charges have been dropped." They escorted Ellie through the station, past the front desk where Barnes was loudly arguing with the police chief. "They can't just barge in here waving federal badges like that." Barnes fell silent the moment Eli walked by, flanked by the two agents. "Officers Barnes and Kyle," Daniels said, his tone like steel. "The Department of Defense is launching a full investigation into the arrest procedures and use of force involving a decorated combat veteran. In the meantime, I suggest you both review the constitutional rights of American citizens, regardless of their housing status." The police chief, a heavy-set man with a perpetually chastised expression, nodded frantically. "I assure you this does not reflect the values of our department. These two officers are being suspended pending internal review." Barnes turned pale. Kyle glared at Eli with open contempt. Eli paused briefly in front of them. "Truth doesn't need force to stand," he said quietly, then walked on. Back straight, head held high, outside the snow had stopped. Everything stood silent under the dim yellow glow of the streetlights. Eli took a deep breath, feeling some of the weight in his chest lift at last. The agents offered him a ride, but Eli shook his head. "I prefer to walk, thank you." As they made their way back to the car, Eli noticed a figure across the street. Rachel, shivering in a thin jacket, hopping slightly to keep warm. When she saw him, she immediately ran across, nearly slipping on the icy pavement. "You're okay," she exhaled, her voice a mix of relief and emotion. "I was afraid they might—" She didn't finish the sentence, her eyes drifting toward the sleek black SUV with federal plates. "You made the call," Eli said. It wasn't a question, it was a fact. Rachel nodded and pulled the military ID from her pocket, handing it to him. "I honestly didn't think it would work. Calling the Pentagon felt like something out of a movie." Eli took it, his fingers brushing hers, just for a moment. He slipped the chain over his neck. The cold metal felt strangely comforting, familiar. "It always works," he said, his voice low but steady. "Truth makes cowards tremble, and General Whitaker always keeps his word." "Who is he?" Rachel asked, genuine curiosity in her eyes. "How does a general at the Pentagon know your name?" Eli tilted his head back, looking up at the night sky where stars had begun to peek through the clouds. "It's a long story," he replied. "And do you think you'd want to hear the rest of that story? Have you ever believed that one person, alone, forgotten, could move the machinery of an entire nation in the name of justice. Sometimes it only takes one person standing up at the right moment to change everything. And tonight's not the end, Rachel said quietly, hugging herself as her shoulders trembled from the cold. Where will you go now? I have a place, Eli said firmly. Don't worry about me. But thank you for believing. Thank you for calling. Rachel hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a small package wrapped in brown paper. Your dinner, she explained. You didn't get to eat. I asked the cook to wrap it up. Eli accepted it with a grateful nod. Kindness is rare these days. Don't forget that. He turned and walked away, his figure slowly shrinking into the snowy landscape. Rachel stood there, watching until he disappeared around a corner, then quietly made her way home, her heart stirred by one question. Had she just set something far bigger in motion than she could ever imagine? In Washington, D.C., General Whitaker was making one final call for the night. Ava, it's your godfather. Harry, a warm, affectionate voice answered. Now that's a surprise. My birthday isn't for another few months. I need a big favor, sweetheart. Name it. I need you to help an old friend. His name is Eli Turner. He's facing a storm. Abel, renowned civil rights attorney known for taking on police brutality cases, straightened instantly in her chair. What kind of storm? The kind that calls for your particular set of skills, Whitaker said. Pack your things. I'm sending someone to pick you up within the hour. But I have court in the morning. This is more important. He saved my life once. It's time we saved his. There was a pause, then Ava answered, steady and certain, I'll be ready. After ending the call, Whitaker looked at a photo on his desk. Himself, younger, standing beside Eli and fellow soldiers in Afghanistan. Brothers in arms. Hang in there, Sergeant, he whispered. Help is on the way. Morning sunlight stretched across the streets of Riverbrook as a black sedan pulled into the lot of the Pine Grove shelter, a weathered brick building that once housed a textile mill, now a haven for the homeless. 3 days had passed since the incident at the Red Rail Diner. The local police had gone unusually quiet, but tension still hung in the air, like the calm before another storm. Ava Washington stepped out of the car, dressed sharply in a navy blue suit, exuding confidence with every step. At 34, she had become a nightmare for many small-town police departments, a fierce advocate for the unheard. The daughter of a judge and goddaughter to General Whitaker, Ava entered any room as if she already belonged. Inside the common room, Eli sat alone at a corner table, hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee. His eyes immediately assessed the woman walking in. The eyes of a soldier who had been to war 3 times, lived 5 years on the fringes of society, and was still standing. Mr. Turner, Ava called. She approached and extended her hand. I'm Ava Washington. General Whitaker sent me. Eli looked at her for a long moment before shaking her hand, a firm handshake marked by the caution of someone who's seen too much. The general moved quicker than I expected. Usually the military takes a decade to get anything done. A faint smile crossed Ava's lips. Harry, General Whitaker, told me you wouldn't be quick to accept help, but he also said you were smart enough not to refuse it when it really mattered. I've taken care of myself for a long time, Ms. Washington. Eli nodded toward the empty seat across from him. Not sure what a high-profile lawyer from D.C. can do about small-town cops with egos bigger than the law. Ava placed her briefcase on the table and sat down. Those officers seriously violated your civil rights, Mr. Turner. And from what I've already uncovered, you're not the first. She leaned in, voice lowering with warning. This isn't just about what happened at the diner. It's part of a long-standing pattern of abuse in this town. Eli's expression didn't change, but something lit up in his eyes. The same flicker that once made him charge through gunfire to rescue his comrades in Kandahar. I'm not looking for a fight, he said softly. With all due respect, Mr. Turner, Ava replied, the fight already found you. You just happened to be standing on the front line. Eli nodded, not quite agreement, maybe just acceptance. What do you need from me? First, your full story. Then, I need to speak with the waitress who recorded the incident. An hour later, at a corner cafe 3 blocks outside of town, Rachel nervously handed her phone to Ava. She'd been uneasy ever since the Pentagon call, terrified that Barnes or Kyle would find out she was the reason Eli had been released. "I have the full video from my phone," Rachel said, voice barely above a whisper. "And the next morning I went back to the diner. I asked my friend Mark, he has system access, to pull the security camera footage too." Ava raised an eyebrow, visibly impressed. "You did well. I kept thinking, what if I hadn't called?" Rachel confessed. "What if no one knew? What if they'd done something to him when no one was watching?" She twisted a napkin in her hands. "My little brother, Jameson. He's in the police academy. He wants to help people. I used to believe the police always did the right thing. Most of them really want to," Eli gently interjected. "But it's the ones chasing power you've got to watch out for." That afternoon, Ava reviewed the footage, taking detailed notes and building the foundation of a legal case. By sunset, she was back in a motel room with Ellie, papers spread across the bed. "There have been multiple complaints of excessive force against Barnes and Kyle," she said. "All dismissed. No disciplinary action." She held up a list. "And those are just the formal reports. I'd bet there are dozens more that were never filed." Eli nodded, his gaze darkening. "Homeless folks learn quickly. The system rarely works in their favor. Funny thing is, some of the ones who filed complaints later disappeared or mysteriously withdrew them." Ava frowned, flipping through her notes. "One man, Lloyd Jenkins, filed a complaint against Kyle last year. 2 days later, he retracted it, said it was a misunderstanding. A week later, he vanished from town. No forwarding address, no trace. Or they made him disappear," Eli said quietly. Ava looked up, eyes sharpening. "That's a serious allegation. I've lived on the streets of Riverbrook for 2 years now, Ms. Washington," Eli said, his voice low, calm, like falling snow. "I've seen plenty of people disappear. Folks who spoke out, made too much noise." He shrugged, expression steady. "The official story's always the same. They left, went looking for better opportunities. But people don't just walk away from everything. Their belongings, their meds, even their winter blankets. If they left like that, it wasn't by choice." As night fell, Ellie began telling Ava his life story. His tone was calm, but behind each word lay a buried pain, embers smoldering beneath the ashes. "Sarah and I were married 3 years when she got sick. Pancreatic cancer, aggressive type. The VA hospital kept losing her records, delaying treatment over administrative issues. By the time they got their act together," he paused, staring out the window into the night. "After the funeral, I couldn't focus, missed mortgage payments. The bank didn't have any administrative issues. They moved fast. Some sketchy company bought up the loan and doubled the payment overnight. Predatory lending," Ava muttered, scribbling notes. "Maybe it doesn't matter anymore. I lost the house, lost my job, couldn't hold it down with the PTSD, and now here I am, just another homeless vet with a tragic backstory." "No, Mr. Turner," Ava said firmly, "you're not just another person. You're the man who saved General Whitaker's life, and now it's our turn to save yours." The next morning, Ava continued her investigation and uncovered something strange. Among the emails she had obtained through legal channels, one name stood out: Shieldman. "It appears to be a secret network within the police department," she explained to Eli and Rachel over lunch. "A group of officers operating outside official channels, under the pretext of protecting the community from undesirables." Rachel shivered. "Sounds like something out of a bad movie. Unfortunately, it's real," Ava replied. "And according to the emails, both Barnes and Kyle are members, along with at least 6 other officers, including Captain Brick, head of internal affairs. Foxes guarding the hen house," Eli muttered. That afternoon, Ava interviewed several other homeless individuals in town. Their stories painted a deeply disturbing picture: systematic harassment, unexplained injuries after arrests, missing belongings while in custody, and most troubling of all, being dropped off outside town in the middle of the night and abandoned in remote areas. They call it helping them relocate for better opportunities," said an elderly man named Frank. His face was etched with time, a map of old grief. "My friend Thomas went through it last winter, got picked up for standing outside the library. Hours later, they dropped him nearly 20 miles away during a snowstorm, no coat. 3 days later, they found his body, frozen in a drainage ditch." Each story added another piece to the dark puzzle. Shield men weren't just a few corrupt cops. They were the core of a coordinated campaign to purge Riverbrook of those they deemed undeserving. When Ava tried to file a formal complaint with the district attorney's office, she didn't expect to hit a wall of passive resistance. "I'm sorry, Miss Washington," said Assistant DA Alan Parker, a young man who wouldn't meet her gaze. "I can't accept the complaint without prior approval from local law enforcement." "That's incorrect and you know it," Ava replied, visibly frustrated. "Civil rights complaints can be filed directly with the DA, especially when the accused are members of the police department." Parker glanced nervously toward the door, then leaned in, lowering his voice. "You don't understand how things work around here," he said. "Allegations like this, they go nowhere. No one's ever succeeded." "Are you being threatened, Parker?" Ava asked, her eyes narrowing. Parker immediately straightened, his tone stiffening. "I think we're done here. Good day, Miss Washington." That evening, Rachel burst into Ava's motel room, eyes wide, breath rapid with both fear and urgency. "My brother, Jameson, just called," she blurted out. "He wants to talk to you. He knows things about Barnes and Kyle, things that could help your case." 30 minutes later, Jameson Miller, dressed in his crisp police academy uniform like it was graduation day, sat across from them, his young face a mix of resolve and lingering fear. "3 years ago, Barnes beat a man to death," he said bluntly. "A homeless man with schizophrenia, having an episode outside a convenience store on Maple. They said the guy attacked first, but the shop owner's statement didn't match the official report." "How do you know this?" Ava asked, recording with Jameson's consent. "Captain Brick uses cases like that as real-world lessons for rookie cadets in Riverbrook," Jameson explained. "It's an unofficial class, off the books. He calls it true education. How to write reports that protect the department and still look like justice." "What was the man's name?" Ava asked. "David West. The report called it an accidental death. But I heard Barnes bragging about it at a summer BBQ last year," Jameson added. "Called it taking out the trash." The next morning, Rachel was fired from the Red Rail Diner. The official reason was too many absences, but everyone knew the truth. Her name had leaked online, identified as the person who filmed the confrontation between Eli and the police. Local forums exploded with backlash. Rachel was branded anti-police, a traitor to the community, someone who sided with vagrants over the law. Threatening messages flooded her inbox. A brick was thrown through the window of her small apartment, wrapped in a note scrawled with, "Cop haters get what they deserve." "They're trying to make an example out of you," Eli said as he helped her board up the broken window. "Threats are their first move," Elia added, hammering each nail with calm precision, like muscle memory from his military days. "Which means they're afraid. And that's a good sign." Rachel quickly wiped away angry tears. "I can't believe this is happening. All because I recorded the truth. Because I didn't want them to hurt you." "They always go after the truth first," Eli replied. "And then they lose." Late that night, as Ava was driving back to her hotel after dinner, a pickup truck lunged from the shadows, swerving straight toward her on a deserted road. She yanked the wheel hard, the car skidding off the road, narrowly avoiding a collision. The truck sped away, tires screeching, insults echoing in the wind. When she got to her room, Ava found the door slightly ajar. Inside, the place had been ransacked. Her laptop was gone. "This isn't just intimidation anymore," she told Eli, who arrived moments later after receiving her urgent call. "They're trying to silence us." Eli calmly surveyed the wrecked room, his eyes steady, the eyes of someone who's survived battlefields. "Then it's time to fight back. But not on their terms, on ours. What's your plan? Ava asked. I need to make a call, Ailish said, to an old friend, a specialist in unconventional warfare. The next morning, Eli stood by a payphone outside a gas station on the edge of town. He insisted on using a landline, a security habit he hadn't dropped since his service days. He dialed from memory. The phone rang. Tech Haven. We fix what others give up on. What can I do for you? The eagle needs new wings, Eli said, using a wartime code phrase. A pause, then, terror. Is that really you? It's me, Q. And I need you. Quincy Q. Morales had once been the communications expert in Eli's unit, a tech genius who could bounce signals off mountains and link satellites from scrap parts. An IED had taken his legs 6 months before discharge, but it hadn't dulled his mind or his will. It was Eli who had carried Q for 3 miles under enemy fire, refusing to leave him behind, even when Q begged him to save himself. Where are you now? Q asked, his tone turning serious. Riverbrook, Pennsylvania, small town, big trouble? I know the place. It's already on my radar. Use of force incidents against the homeless are abnormally high. The sound of fast typing echoed through the phone. Give me 6 hours. I'll bring reinforcements. And as promised, 6 hours later, a tricked-out van bearing the logo Q's Tech Haven rolled into the parking lot of Ava's new motel. After the break-in, she had changed locations, paid in cash, and used an alias to stay off the radar. Q rolled down the ramp in his wheelchair, fast and precise, as if still moving on his own legs. At 38, he still had the solid build of a former operator, biceps taut beneath a worn Batman t-shirt. Behind him were 3 others, 2 men and a woman, each carrying heavy-duty cases filled with specialized equipment. Eli met them outside. The moment he saw Q again, his chest tightened. They clasped forearms, a warrior's greeting, carried from Afghanistan. Both men's eyes glistened with restrained emotion. You're still finding ways to stir up trouble, huh? Q grinned. And you're still the guy I count on to pull me out of it, Eli replied, a rare smile flickering at the edge of his lips. Inside the motel room, introductions moved quickly. Alongside Q were Marcus Ghost Wilson, former intelligence analyst, expert in digital data decryption; Brianna Trace Hamilton, ex-military police counterintelligence specialist; Jordan Link Peterson, cybersecurity expert, once with the NSA, now running his own firm. We run a legitimate tech company, Q explained, noting Ava and Rachel's hesitant expressions. But on the side, we operate a nonprofit, supporting veterans failed by the system, especially when they become targets of corruption. Is that legal? Rachel asked cautiously. Trace smiled. We operate in the gray zone. Never break the law, but we always uncover the truth, no matter how deep it's buried. We're digital archaeologists, Link added, digging up the secrets they hope no one would find. And in my experience, Ava chimed in, syncing quickly with her new allies, legally obtained evidence is still evidence, no matter how embarrassing it is to the powerful. Exactly, Q nodded. Now, let's talk strategy. Within hours, the motel room had transformed into a command center. Multiple laptops whirred. A scanner picked up police radio frequencies. Ghost had already breached Riverbrook's traffic camera network. Priority 1, secure communications, Q said, handing each person an encrypted phone. These can't be traced or tapped. From now on, only use these. Second, Trace continued, we map out the corruption network, who's connected to whom, who gives the orders, who enforces them. And third, Link added, follow the money. Organized corruption always has a financial trail. While the tech teams set up their equipment, Eli pulled Rachel aside. This could get dangerous, he warned. You don't have to keep going. Rachel squared her shoulders. They've already threatened me, ruined my reputation, nearly killed Ms. Washington. I'm in this now and I'm not backing down. Eli nodded, seeing in her eyes the same fire he'd seen in young soldiers stepping onto the battlefield for the first time. Just be careful. These people don't play fair. For the next 3 days, Q's team worked around the clock, tracking the digital fingerprints of the SHIELD men. They hacked emails, analyzed police reports, and cross-referenced data with official records. "Got it," Ghost announced on the third night, eyes locked on his screen. Crypto transfers made to multiple Riverbrook police officers, including Barnes, Kyle, and Captain Brick. "Source of the funds?" Ely asked, stepping closer, eyes locked on the screen. "A private defense contractor called Falcon Corps," Ghost replied, still typing. "They route the money through a chain of shell companies. Payments range from $2,000.00 to $5,000.00 a month, depending on the officer's rank." "What's their business?" Ava asked, already taking notes. Trace pulled up another data window. "Officially, they provide security consulting and equipment to law enforcement nationwide. But unofficially," she paused, frowning at the screen. "What is it?" Ely asked, his voice low. "They're buying up real estate all over Riverbrook and surrounding areas through subsidiaries." "Where?" Ely pressed. Link typed rapidly, then turned his screen toward them. A map of Riverbrook appeared, dozens of marked locations glowing, mostly in former working-class neighborhoods with cheap rentals and public housing. "And the homeless encampments too," Ely added, his eyes narrowing. "They're redeveloping the area, and we're in the way." While Q's team continued the digital investigation, Ava began interviewing homeless veterans in the area. Each story added another piece to a chilling puzzle. "They're targeting us," said a woman named Diane Miller, a former Army medic who served in Iraq. "Cops come to the camp, seize everything, citing health or safety, then force us out. If we resist, they arrest us on made-up charges." "Did they ever tell you where they wanted you to go?" Ava asked. "They always said to head to Maplewood or Grantsville," Diane replied. "Towns over 20 miles from here. Said they had better services for veterans. But when we got there, those towns had stricter anti-camping laws and no shelters." Each interview confirmed it. This wasn't coincidence. It was a coordinated campaign to force the homeless, especially veterans, out of Riverbrook. Meanwhile, Jameson Miller, the police cadet, agreed to wear a hidden recorder during off-the-books training sessions led by Captain Brick. The risk of exposure was high, but Jameson was determined to expose the rot in the profession he once believed in. "Remember," Ava cautioned before he left, "don't press for answers. Just listen. When they feel safe, they'll talk more freely." Jameson nodded, adjusting the compact recorder beneath his uniform. "I understand. I won't let you down." That night, the recording Jameson returned with exceeded every expectation. Not only did Barnes and Kyle brag about sweeping out trash and getting bonuses for arrests, but Captain Brick directly referenced ties to Falcon Corps. "The company needs those properties cleared out by the end of the quarter," Brick said during a training session. "Every drifter we push out means more money in the city budget and in our pockets. Win-win." "But what if they won't leave?" one cadet asked. "Then we've got holding cells in the old warehouse," Brick replied casually, as if it were standard procedure. "Sometimes," Brick had said, "people need a little special persuasion to realize they're no longer welcome here." And that increasingly was becoming reality. Rachel, who had quietly continued supporting the group while searching for a new job, suggested a different approach to draw public attention. "People respond to faces, to real stories," she explained. "If we create short videos featuring the veterans being targeted, humanize them, share their service history and the pain they're living through in Riverbrook, people will care." With Q's technical support, Rachel began filming a mini-documentary series, capturing the stories of willing veterans. She carefully edited each video, juxtaposing their heroic service with the inhumane treatment they were now receiving from local authorities. The first video featuring Ely was posted on social media Thursday night. By Friday morning, it had over 1 million views. The impact was immediate and overwhelming. Local TV stations picked up the story. National veterans organizations issued statements of support. The hashtag Justice for Ely began trending nationwide. Little public pressure forced Judge William Harmon, who had previously dismissed multiple complaints of violence tied to the Shieldman group, to agree to meet with Ava. Under a mix of sharp questioning and subtle threats of exposure, he revealed a chilling truth. "Brick has a file on everyone," he confessed. hand shaking as he poured a third glass of whiskey. He calls it the police ledger. Dirt on judges, council members, business owners. Anyone who could get in his way. M threatened to leak an affair I had years ago. His voice cracked. Said my family would fall apart, and so you buried the complaints, Ava said coldly. I just wanted to protect my family, the judge whispered. God forgive me. Each new piece of evidence helped the team refine their plan to dismantle Brick and the entire Shieldman network. They would use live-stream testimonies, covert surveillance, and mounting media attention to force the perpetrators into the open. We have to move fast, Eli warned during a strategy meeting. The more we pressure them, the more reckless they'll become. He wasn't wrong. That afternoon, as Rachel left the hotel to grab lunch for the team, a patrol car pulled up beside her. Kyle stepped out, his face twisted into a mocking grin. Rachel Miller, he said. You're under arrest for obstructing justice and falsifying evidence. This is ridiculous, Rachel stepped back. I haven't done anything wrong. Your video says otherwise, Barnes added, appearing from the driver's seat. Get in the car. Despite her protests, despite it being broad daylight with people nearby, they forced her into the car and sped off. A traffic camera, one Q had already hacked, captured the entire abduction. Less than 5 minutes later, Eli was mobilizing the response. They're not taking her to the station, he said, calm but with controlled fury burning in his eyes. It's too public. They'll take her to an off-the-books site, like that warehouse Brick mentioned. Using the city's surveillance network, Q's team traced the vehicle toward the abandoned industrial zone on the edge of town. The patrol car disappeared into the crumbling shell of an old warehouse complex. Once a furniture factory, now just debris and rust, and an illegal holding site for those the authorities wanted to silence. I need 4 volunteers, Ellis said, his voice firm, the presence of a soldier taking command. Combat veterans preferred. This is dangerous, but we go by the book. No weapons, no excessive force. Our only objective is to get Rachel out safely. Within an hour, Eli had assembled a 5-person team, each with specialized military backgrounds, from recon logistics to engineering and battlefield medicine. They approached the warehouse from multiple directions, communicating through encrypted radios and hand signals. With thermal imaging gear supplied by Q, they identified 2 heat signatures inside a small shack, one stationary, likely Rachel, the other pacing, possibly a guard. Eli led the team, moving with the silence and precision that had once made him a legend in Afghanistan's special operations community. At his signal, 2 members staged a diversion at the main entrance, while Eli and 2 others flanked the rear. The lock was disabled within seconds. Inside, Rachel was tied to a chair, a fresh bruise on her cheek, but alert. Beside her was Officer Barnes, awaiting orders from someone. His hand moved toward his holster, but Eli was faster. A clean, efficient takedown, honed through countless close combat encounters, dropped Barnes before he could touch his weapon. Are you all right? Eli asked as he untied her. I'm okay, Rachel said shakily, adrenaline still flooding her system. They were waiting for Brick. He kept asking about the evidence. She was helped to her feet, then quietly pulled a tiny recorder from inside her shoe. I've been recording since the moment they grabbed me, Rachel said, her smile faint but proud. Eli's team withdrew from the warehouse as swiftly as they had arrived, leaving Barnes unconscious but not seriously injured. By the time police backup reached the scene, responding to the diversion, Rachel was already safely back at the hotel, seated among allies, listening to the recording with steadier eyes than ever before. They admitted everything, she said, her voice now firm. Kyle said, and I quote, "No one believes junkies or crazy homeless vets. We bury them, and that's the end of it." Ava listened, her expression darkening, but there was a glint of steel in her eyes. With this, plus everything we've already gathered, we have enough to bring this entire corrupt system crashing down. Eli nodded, his gaze meeting views across the room. No words were needed. Between them was the silent understanding of those who had survived war and knew the real battle was still ahead. Then this time, we're the ones burying them, Eli said, his voice low and hard as cold steel. The morning after Rachel's rescue, the makeshift command center pulsed with tension and resolve. Eli sat quietly in the corner, watching Q's team focused on a laptop. The audio confession played for a third time. No one believes a junkie or some crazed, wandering vet. We take care of them. Kyle's voice, unmistakable, echoed through the room. The sheer cruelty in his tone made Rachel flinch. The bruise on her cheek had darkened, a silent mark of what she had endured. "This is pure gold," Q said, swiveling in his chair to face the group. "Add Jameson's recordings and all the other evidence. We can bring this whole operation down." Ava nodded, her legal mind already mapping the path forward. A clear confession to targeting the homeless, especially veterans, is a serious civil rights violation. And with the financial ties to Falcon Corps, we have grounds for a RICO case. "The key now is timing," Eli said, his voice quiet but instantly commanding attention. "We need to act before they realize what we know." The team worked nonstop through the morning, reviewing and analyzing every piece of data. By early afternoon, Ghost emerged from a corner of the room, his face lit with urgency. "I've accessed a hidden server," he announced, waving them over. 3 years' worth of cleanup operation plans are on here. Internal memos, performance evaluations based on removal numbers, bonuses from Falcon Corps, everything. Trace leaned close to the screen, scanning files rapidly. "This isn't just Riverbrook. Look at this distribution list. Multiple towns, tightly coordinated. Shieldmen units embedded in police departments across 3 counties. This is a national scandal waiting to erupt," Ava said softly, her eyes locked on page after page of damning documents. "They've been targeting minorities, veterans, activists, all under the guise of community stabilization. And Falcon Corps is funding the entire operation." "But why?" Rachel asked, still struggling to grasp the scale of the conspiracy. "Real estate," Eli answered bitterly. "Look at the redevelopment plans. Falcon subsidiaries bought up property in the cleared zones for next to nothing, then flipped it for huge profit once the vulnerable were forced out." The revelation hit Rachel like a punch she never saw coming. She had watched her hometown change over the years. Old diners replaced with sleek cafes, luxury apartments rising where affordable housing once stood. But she'd never connected it to the rising violence against the homeless community. "My brother, he was part of this," Rachel said quietly, her voice breaking under the weight of realization. "He must have known." As if fate were listening, a knock came at the door. Q instantly shifted all screens to a harmless dummy interface, while Eli moved to answer, his right hand subtly brushing the hidden knife strapped to his ankle. Standing there was Jameson, still in his cadet uniform but looking gaunt, his eyes sunken, like winter had taken root in him. "I need to talk to you," he said, straight to Rachel. Rachel stepped forward, arms crossed, wary. "About what?" "Not here." Jameson glanced at the others in the room. "Privately." Eli shook his head slightly. "Whatever you need to say to Rachel, you can say in front of all of us. Trust here isn't just personal anymore. It's life or death." There was a long pause. Then Jameson's shoulders slumped. "I'm sorry," he said, eyes glistening as he looked at Rachel. "I should have spoken up sooner. I knew, not everything, but enough to know it was wrong." "Then why didn't you say something?" Rachel asked, her voice thick with pain. Jameson lowered his head, voice hoarse. "Right after I graduated from the academy, Brick recruited me directly. He told me I had potential, that I'd go far if I understood how the world really works." He swallowed hard, then continued. "He showed me a file, a dossier on you, photos of your apartment, your daily routine. He said, 'Your career starts with loyalty. Betray us, and your family will pay the price.'" The room froze. Rachel stepped back, the anger draining from her face, replaced by shock and sorrow. "Classic intimidation tactic," Eli said, his voice softer than the words. Make the family the hostage. I just wanted to protect you, Jameson added, finally meeting her eyes. I played along, but after what happened yesterday, I can't anymore. I won't help them for another second. Ava stepped forward. We can protect you both, but we need everything you know. Names, locations, how it all works. Jameson nodded, his eyes now hard with resolve. I'll tell you everything. As the day wore on, the pieces began to fall into place, faster and more disturbingly than anyone had expected. Fieldman was no longer just a rogue unit. It was an underground network embedded in multiple police departments, operating quietly with one mission: eliminate problem individuals to make way for Falcon Corps' real estate acquisitions. Participating officers were rewarded handsomely. Those who resisted were isolated, threatened, or disappeared. By late afternoon, Eli asked for a moment alone. He needed space to clear his head, to prepare for the battle ahead. Can you imagine that the transformation of a town, new buildings, quiet streets, could be built on blood, silence, and fear of those deemed unfit? And if you were Jameson, would you have the courage to stand against the very people who once protected you? The truth was now undeniable, but victory belonged only to those willing to see it through. Ellie walked to the small Veterans Memorial in the center of town, where a black granite wall bore the names of local soldiers who never came home. His hand rested silently on a familiar name etched in stone: Moloch Johnson, his best friend, his brother in arms, who had died during the ambush in Kandahar the same day Ellie saved General Whitaker. This time, it'll mean something, Eli whispered to the cold, unyielding stone. This time, we finish the mission. Lost in memory, he almost missed the black SUV gliding past the park entrance. The driver looked directly at him, an all too familiar gaze, the assessing eyes of someone who'd chosen their target. Combat instincts, honed over years, snapped to attention. Something wasn't right. Eli raced back to the hotel, just in time to see a scene that made his chest tighten. Police cars surrounding the building, red and blue lights flashing like a warning siren. Tactical officers were already breaching the room where Q had set up their command center. Keeping out of sight, Eli immediately called Q through their encrypted line. They're raiding us, Q answered instantly, his voice tense but steady. Anonymous tip. Suspicious computer activity. They're saying we're hackers threatening national security. Is everyone okay? Eli asked, watching as officers carried out equipment. They got rough. I broke my arm when they flipped my wheelchair. Trace and Ghost are fine. They took everything, but we prepped for this. Everything was uploaded to a secure server. They didn't access a thing. What about Rachel? She and Ava were out grabbing food. Link went with them. Jameson's been arrested, interfering with police operations. The raid's being led by Brederick himself. This is escalating fast. Go dark, Eli ordered. I'll contact you on the backup channel. Just as he ended the call, a hand touched his shoulder. Spinning on instinct, he found Rachel, her eyes wide with panic. They took everything, she whispered. All of Q's equipment, all the evidence. Not everything, Ailey reassured her. Q's team anticipated this. The raid proves we're on the right track. They're scared. Ava joined them, her expression ice-cold, but her eyes burning with purpose. We need to move faster. Rachel's next video goes live tonight. It has to show the raid, expose the shieldmen, and draw the connection between Brick and Falcon Corps. But Q's gear is gone, Rachel said, anxious. From down the block, Link appeared, carrying a slim laptop under one arm. There's always a backup plan, he said with a faint smile. I grabbed this before the raid. Everything we need is right here. That night, in a vacant apartment loaned to them by a veteran Eli knew, the group worked tirelessly. They edited and uploaded their most powerful video yet, a visual and audio indictment that could not be denied. The video, released overnight, did exactly what it needed to do. No sugarcoating, no ambiguity. It captured the full raid, exposed the operational structure of SHIELD men, and layered in damning recordings of Brick breaking the law. Public reaction was immediate and explosive. Overnight, the video went viral, millions of views, thousands of shares. The hashtag Justice for Ellie quickly climbed to the top of national trends. Local news jumped on it first. Then national networks followed. CNN, NBC, even the BBC reported on the story. Ava's phone rang nonstop. State senators, investigative journalists, human rights groups, all reaching out, ready to help. The movement they had sparked was now beyond their control and unstoppable. "This is working," Rachel said in awe, eyes locked on the screen, as thousands of supportive comments poured in. "People are listening. They believe us." "Truth has power," Eli replied, his voice calm but weighty, especially when it's been buried for so long. But the pressure was crushing the other side. That same night, news broke. Officer Barnes, recently suspended and under investigation, had reached out to Brick, offering to testify in exchange for immunity. "He's panicking," Ava said, jotting notes on her iPad. "They all are. When a rotten system starts to crumble, everyone tries to save themselves." Eli nodded, but his face remained tense. "And that's when they're most dangerous. Brick won't go down quietly. He'll silence anyone he sees as a threat." Almost as if to confirm Eli's words, Q called in with a shocking update. Barnes was found dead, his body dumped in an alley behind the police station. Preliminary report, drug overdose. "Such convenient timing," Q remarked bitterly. "Especially since the recording device he was supposed to be carrying during his meeting with Brick was never found." "They're eating their own now," Eli told Ava grimly. "The walls are closing in, Brick's erasing everything." That night, while everyone else had collapsed from exhaustion, Eli sat by the window, gazing out at the quiet street below, his thoughts far from still. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Turner here," he said when the line picked up. "I need the old team, all of them." There was a beat of silence, then a familiar, steady voice. "Like victory all over again." Eli's mind flashed to their darkest days in Afghanistan. Surrounded, outnumbered, outgunned, but never surrendering. "Exactly like that," he answered. "I need ears, eyes, and boots on the ground." "Immediately. Consider it done," the voice replied. "The old team is en route." 3 days later, Ava stood at a podium in the Riverbrook Community Center. Before her was a sea of people, citizens, journalists, civil rights advocates, and a live stream broadcasting to millions nationwide. The town hall she organized had far exceeded expectations. The hall was packed, aisles crowded, the parking lot overflowing with attendees. "Today we give voice to those who were once silenced," Ava began, her voice strong and resonant, carrying to every corner of the packed room. "Today we shine light on a darkness that has festered far too long within our justice system." In the front row sat Eli, Rachel, Jameson, and many other victims of the Shieldman network. In the control booth at the back, Q and his team quietly managed the event's tech, visuals, sound, live stream, all flawless. "For weeks now we have uncovered evidence of systemic civil rights violations, specifically targeting the homeless, and more pointedly military veterans. Not just here in Riverbrook, but in surrounding communities as well," Ava continued. "This is not about a few bad apples or isolated incidents. This is a coordinated conspiracy criminalizing poverty to fuel the financial interests of private corporations." Behind her, a large screen cycled through internal documents, leaked emails, bank statements, each one part of a devastating case against Shieldman and Falconcore. Meanwhile, across town, Captain Brick held a hastily organized press conference outside the police station. Flanked by Kyle and several other officers, they put on a righteous front, posturing for the cameras. "These outrageous accusations are nothing more than an attack on the integrity of law enforcement," Brick declared loudly. "Elijah Turner is a mentally unstable homeless man exploiting public sympathy with fabricated claims and doctored evidence." But it seemed no one was listening anymore. Reporters' phones began to buzz, notifications that Ava's live hearing was drawing millions of viewers. One by one, they lowered their mics and left the scene for the bigger story. Brick was left shouting into a void that was growing emptier by the second. Back at the community center, Rachel stepped up to the podium, hands slightly trembling, but her voice steady. I grew up in Riverbrook. I've worked at the Red Rail Diner since I was 19. I used to believe police were here to protect all of us. She lightly touched the faded bruise on her cheek. But when I saw Barnes and Kyle attack a man just for being present in a public space, when I heard them mock his military service, when they threatened me for trying to help, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. Jameson followed his sister, now out of his cadet uniform and dressed in a simple button-up like any ordinary citizen. His eyes held the weight of responsibility and regret. I joined the academy because I wanted to serve my community, he began. But what I was taught was how to target the vulnerable, how to falsify reports, how to become part of a system that values property over people. His voice cracked. I'm ashamed of my silence, but I won't be silent any longer. One by one, victims stepped forward to share their stories. A mother whose teenage son was beaten by Kyle for sitting outside their apartment past curfew. An elderly veteran forced to abandon everything he owned after being threatened with arrest for illegal camping. A small business owner coerced into calling police every time a homeless person stood near her shop. Each testimony added another piece to a horrifying portrait of systemic abuse and corruption. And finally, it was Eli's turn. He walked slowly to the podium, his posture still that of a soldier, aware that hundreds of eyes were tracking his every move. For several seconds, Eli simply looked out over the crowd. His gaze settled on face after face, searching for the kind of connection no broadcast camera could capture. My name is Elijah Turner, he said, voice deep and deliberate. I served 3 tours in Afghanistan. I held the rank of Staff Sergeant in the United States Army. I received 2 Purple Hearts and 1 Silver Star for combat action. I watched my friends die for the freedoms we're enjoying right now. He paused. The room was silent, better under control. When I came home, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. The VA lost her treatment records. They called it a clerical error. By the time they got their act together, it was too late. I lost my home to predatory lending, lost my job because PTSD made it impossible to survive in a corporate world. And when I had nowhere left to go, I became invisible except to those who saw me as a problem to be removed. Each word Eli spoke cut through the silence like a blade. The crowd was motionless, but I never broke my oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. What we're exposing in Riverbrook isn't just about a few harassed homeless veterans. It's about the rot of values this country once claimed to uphold. It's about justice being auctioned off to the highest bidder. As Eli spoke, Q's team launched the final stage of the plan. They infiltrated Shieldman's internal communication system, bypassing layers of encryption to access hours of concealed data, including audio recordings and body cam footage never included in official reports. All of it began broadcasting on the giant screen behind Ava and to the millions watching live. Shocking scenes unfolded, Kyle and Barnes using racial slurs while discussing how to handle the homeless, Brick giving orders to clean up sites ahead of Falcon Corps inspections, officers laughing as they confessed to planting evidence on homeless suspects to get longer sentences. The auditorium erupted. Some people wept, others screamed in rage. In that moment, the polished mask of Shieldman shattered, completely, irreversibly. That night, the Department of Justice officially announced a federal investigation into the Riverbrook Police Department and the Shieldman network. Whistleblowers were offered immunity to encourage cooperation. Ava worked non-stop to ensure Jameson was protected under those terms. The local police chief, in a panic, temporarily suspended Brick and Kyle, but by the time the order came down, Brick had vanished. He's running, Q reported during his strategy session at the group's new base. At upstairs office above veteran-run cafe, we tracked him withdrawing cash from 3 different banks yesterday. He's getting ready to disappear. Can we track him? Ava asked, her voice no longer that of a lawyer, but of a warrior. We're trying, Link replied, pointing to a bank of monitors running surveillance software, tracking credit card activity and traffic camera footage. But he's being careful, only using burner phones, paying in cash, avoiding all major routes. Eli glanced at Q, just one look, and the two understood each other instantly. He'll contact Falcon Corey, Eli predicted. He knows too much. He'll demand a way out in exchange for his silence. But will they help him? Rachel wondered. Or cut their losses? The answer came the next morning. In the most brutal way possible, Officer Barnes's body was found in an alley behind a bar known to be a police hangout. Initial reports labeled it an overdose, but when Ava and the team arrived on the scene, they discovered his recording device was gone. The body had been moved. The staging said it all. This wasn't an OD, Eli said firmly after surveying the scene. This was a hit. Barnes was ready to talk, and someone made sure he couldn't. Falcon Corps is cleaning house, Q nodded gravely. Brick is next if they find him. The team kicked into high gear. They knew Brick's testimony could be the final piece to bring down the whole system and save lives that were still in danger. Then, at that pivotal moment, reinforcements arrived. A modified van pulled up outside their base. Driving was Samir Wrench-Taleb, former mechanic and drone specialist for their unit. He had a gift. He could build or fix anything with gears. Next came Deschamps, Echo Rivers. His rental car was unremarkable, but he wasn't. A reconnaissance and intel-gathering expert, Echo could blend into any environment, pull secrets from the tightest lips, and vanish without a trace. Finally, Clarissa Doc Holloway appeared, carrying 2 large medical kits and the calm presence that had saved countless lives on the front lines. Now, a PTSD therapist, she healed both bodies and minds. The reunion was brief but heavy with emotion. Strong handshakes, tight embraces, wordless glances. They had stared down death before, so no one needed to ask why they had come. Eli had called. That was enough. Sitrep? Echo asked, instantly shifting into mission mode. Eli laid out everything in military terms. Corruption exposed, evidence secured, a target on the run, and a critical task. Find Brick before he's silenced or vanishes. We need full surveillance coverage, Eli continued. Wrench, can you get eyes in the sky? Wrench grinned, tapping a storage crate beside him. 3 drones ready. High-res thermal encrypted feeds. From now on, nothing moves in this town without us seeing it. Echo, I need you to work your contacts in private security. Falcon Corps is definitely using local contractors for cleanup ops, Eli added. Already digging? Echo nodded, eyes glued to his screen. Got 2 names. Former Blackwater guys now working corporate. Both are checked in at a motel on the north end of town. Doc, we may have casualties. Rachel and Q have already been targeted. We need medical support on site. I'm ready, Doc said firmly. From trauma tape to field surgery, I've got it covered. I've also coordinated with trusted nurses at the county hospital for emergency transfers. I'm also in contact with our legal team in D.C., Ava added. We have a federal prosecutor on standby and witness protection for anyone who needs it. In just a few days, they had turned Riverbrook from a town of silence into a fortress of truth and resistance. Veterans from across the country began arriving, drawn by Eli's story and Rachel's videos, volunteering to protect key witnesses. Local businesses that once stayed silent now openly displayed banners supporting the investigation. A safe house network was established, encrypted communications deployed. A community once complicit through silence was now leading the fight for justice. 2 days later, one of Wrench's surveillance drones captured a critical moment. Captain Brick slipping into a private airstrip outside town under cover of night, carrying a large duffel bag stuffed with cash. Is making a run for it, Echo confirmed after analyzing the footage. The plane's registered to a shell company linked to Falcon Corps, scheduled to depart at 4:00 a.m. Eli checked his watch. Less than 3 hours. This is our shot, he said, eyes scanning the room, at old comrades and new allies alike, bound together by a single mission. Tonight we end this. How do we deploy? Q asked, pulling up the airport map on his laptop. Notify the feds, Ava suggested. Have them intercept him on sight. Too risky, Ailey shook his head. If Brick sees law enforcement, he'll vanish, and if Falcon has moles inside federal agencies, like we suspect, this could blow everything. Then what's the alternative? Rachel asked. Might go in alone, one-on-one, just me and Brick. No way, Doc immediately protested. He's desperate. He'll be armed for sure. And I'm a combat vet. I know what I'm doing, Ailey replied, calm but firm. He doesn't want to fight. He wants out. I just need to stall him long enough for the feds to move in. After a heated debate, a middle ground plan was agreed upon. Eli would make first contact. Echo would provide sniper overwatch from a nearby hangar. Wrench would monitor the area via drone surveillance. Doc and Q would operate a mobile command post half a mile out, ready to react to anything. Ava had already coordinated with federal agents waiting on standby, ready to act on her signal. As the team finalized preparations, Rachel pulled Eli aside. Be careful, she said, her eyes full of worry. Brick has nothing left to lose. Eli looked at her, his gaze softening slightly. That's what makes him predictable, he said gently. When survival is all that's left, people stop being complex. I know that better than most. He glanced at his watch. It was time. The final confrontation in this war on home soil was about to begin. The private airfield lay quiet under a sea of stars. A stretch of concrete isolated in the undulating rural landscape. The narrow runway unfurled like a black ribbon, lit only by sparse strips of pale blue lights flickering in the dark. The air carried the sharp tang of jet fuel mingled with damp earth as Eli moved silently through the shadows. Every sense heightened to maximum alert. Wrench, report. Ellie whispered into his earpiece. All heat signature inside the hangar office. Wrench's voice came steady. Another approaching from the side road, headlights off. Likely our target. Echo, are you in position? Affirmative, Echo replied coolly. I've got clear visuals on both the hangar and the runway. If he moves erratically, I can neutralize non-lethally. Eli adjusted his stance, taking cover behind a fuel truck. His line of sight trained directly on the small office connected to the main hangar. Inside, a figure paced nervously, likely the pilot awaiting his passenger. Headlights flashed briefly on the side road, then cut out. A car door opened. Heavy footsteps crunched over gravel. Getting closer. Captain Brick emerged from the darkness, a large duffel slung over his shoulder. Even from a distance, Eli could see the tension in his stride, eyes constantly darting behind. The man was unraveling. Eli waited until Brick was halfway down the path, then stepped out of the shadows, blocking his route. Where are you headed, Captain? Brick froze. His hand instinctively drifted toward his belt, where his holster used to be. Don't, Eli said quietly but with steel. My team's got this place covered from every angle. Tonight ends one way or another. Under the runway's dim lights, Brick's face twisted in disdain. Sterner. I should have known. You never did learn when to quit. I learned perseverance in Kandahar, Eli replied, his eyes locked on target. And I know when the truth needs to be protected at all costs. When did you forget your oath to serve and protect? Eli asked, his tone low but sharp as a blade. Save me the righteous act, Brick sneered. You don't understand how the world really works. You think anyone gives a damn about homeless vets or justice? It's all money and power, always has been. And that justifies beating people who fought for this country, falsifying reports, driving them out of town like garbage? Brick laughed, bitter and mocking. You used to be a hero, Turner. Now you're just another lost cause. Me, I'm revitalizing this town. Property values are up, education's better, everyone's winning. It's just business. Eli didn't respond right away. He took a single step forward, eyes blazing. You're killing people to protect profit. I've watched brothers die to protect lives. That's the difference between us. At that moment, the two stood still in the darkness. Two men, two worlds. Two irreconcilable beliefs. Then Brick's lips moved slightly, his voice shifting to persuasion. What do you want? Money? I've got plenty. He tapped the duffel bag. Take half. Start a new life somewhere with your skills. I don't want blood money, Eli cut in. I want justice. For every person you and the Shieldmen crushed, Rick gave a cold smirk. Justice? There's no such thing in this world, Turner. Just winners and losers. And I don't lose. Suddenly he pulled a gun from under his coat. But right at that moment, the runway lights flared on, blinding and brilliant. A booming voice rang out from the loudspeaker. Federal agents, drop your weapon immediately. Startled, Brick turned his gun toward Eli, more out of desperation than calculation. Bang! Echo's shot rang out, striking Brick in the shoulder. His weapon clattered to the ground. Federal agents rushed in, surrounding and restraining Brick. Ava stepped out of an SUV, flanked by two senior officers. I thought we agreed you'd wait for my signal, Ellie said, half chiding. The plan changed when he drew his weapon. Ava replied, her eyes locked on Brick. I wasn't going to let him kill you. They searched Brick's bag. Nearly $500,000 in cash, 3 fake passports, and a USB drive containing sensitive data, likely insurance against Falcon Corps. Captain David Brick, a federal agent, declared, you're under arrest for civil rights violations, conspiracy to extort, and armed assault. Clutching his injured shoulder, Brick gritted his teeth. You won't get far with this circus. The Falcon Corps has people everywhere. Judges, prosecutors, senators. You've started a war. You can't win. Eli didn't respond. He simply watched as Brick was led to the vehicle. We swear by the principle that war is bad. He whispered, the moment you decided human lives were expendable. Then he turned his back. And it ends when justice wins, no matter how long it takes. The courtroom was packed. Ava stood firm at the witness podium, holding a binder thick with hundreds of pages of evidence. Abuse, collusion, cover-ups. Each page a puzzle piece. Every clip Rachel recorded, every victim's story from across the country, together painting a chilling picture of a systemic violation of human rights, operated by law enforcement and fueled by corporate greed. What we uncovered is not just the issue of one small town, Ava said, her voice ringing strong and clear. The Shieldman network operates in at least 7 states, targeting society's most vulnerable, especially homeless veterans, in service of disguised land grabs under the pretense of community improvement. The judge, a seasoned woman with decades of civil rights experience, listened silently. When the hearing concluded, she ordered the immediate shutdown of all identified Shieldmen chapters and opened a nationwide investigation into Falcon Corps. In the days that followed, media coverage exploded. Major networks launched special reports. Congress announced formal hearings. Public outrage soared as hundreds more victims came forward. Eli suddenly found himself in the spotlight. Veteran organizations invited him to speak at rallies. Advocacy groups wanted him as their figurehead. A senator personally called, inviting him to testify before Congress. I'm not a politician, Eli told Q, after turning down his 3rd interview of the day. I'm just a soldier who saw something wrong and tried to fix it. And that's exactly what the world needs, Q replied, glancing up from a laptop he was repairing. Not celebrities, not actors, just someone willing to stand for what's right. But the cost was high. Eli still had no permanent home. A local vet let him stay temporarily. His PTSD nightmares worsened, and even as support grew, he couldn't stop thinking about those who didn't make it, especially Thomas, the man who froze to death in a drainage ditch after being dumped in winter. Doc Holloway, with expertise as both medic and trauma therapist, sat beside Ellie one quiet evening at their temporary base. "You're carrying the weight of the world," she said gently. "Every vet who didn't come back, everyone brick-targeted, you hold them all inside. But Eli, you can't save them all." "I know," Ellie whispered, staring at his calloused hands. "But I still mourn the ones I couldn't. Its sorrow matters." Doc nodded. "But don't forget to see what you have done. You started a movement, and now it's bigger than this town. You're helping thousands." Eli was silent for a long time before quietly saying, "Sierra would be proud." Mentioning his late wife lowered his voice. "She used to say, 'That stubbornness of yours will save your life someday.'" And now, Doc smiled, it's saving a whole community. The next morning, Eli received an official invitation to speak at a federal hearing on veteran homelessness and police reform. At first he declined, "Not because of me," he said, "but because I don't think I deserve it." Rachel looked him straight in the eyes. "Because you're not doing it for yourself. You're speaking for those who never got a chance to be heard." When Eli took the podium in Washington, D.C., wearing a simple suit donated by a fellow veteran, he didn't speak like a hero. He spoke like a survivor. And that voice, steady, grounded, echoed across the nation, carrying the weight of the forgotten and sparking a new hope for justice. "I stand here today not as a hero, but as a witness," Eli began, his voice resonating throughout the congressional hearing room. "A witness to the pain of those who served this country only to be abandoned by the very systems meant to protect them. A witness to the corruption that places profit above human dignity. And above all, a witness to the courage of ordinary people who risked everything to speak the truth." Eli called for a comprehensive overhaul of the veteran housing system, independent oversight of police departments, and legislation to protect whistleblowers. He read aloud the names of 23 veterans who had died on the streets of Riverbrook in the past 5 years, not from war, but from society's indifference. "Their deaths were not inevitable," he said, eyes glistening. "They were the result of choices. The choices of those who believed some lives mattered more than others, and the choices of institutions that chose to look away." The entire chamber rose in thunderous applause. Even lawmakers who had attended only for show couldn't hide their emotions. The committee chair immediately announced emergency funding for veteran assistance programs and pledged swift legislative action on police reform. In Riverbrook, the wave of change had spread. Red Rail Diner reopened under new management after the former owner was found complicit in falsified reports against the homeless. Rachel declined the offer to return. "I'm opening a nonprofit cafe," she said in a video call, unable to hide her excitement. "We'll hire homeless veterans, train them, and turn this place into a community support center. Come help me paint the walls, okay?" Eli smiled, a rare, gentle smile. "I'd be honored." Jameson, after giving critical testimony, began therapy to heal from the trauma of police academy indoctrination. He later joined Ava's team as a full-time investigator, using his insider knowledge to expose corruption in other departments. The broader investigation into Falcon Corps led to the criminal indictment of its CEO. Stock prices plummeted. Class action lawsuits were filed by communities previously targeted under its disguised redevelopment scheme. What began in a small diner had become a national symbol of justice, compassion, and second chances. 6 months later, on a snowy night just like that fateful one, Eli walked the old streets once again, no longer in his worn military coat, but in a sharp, dark suit gifted by a veterans organization. His gait steady, his eyes bright. Each step a quiet declaration. He stopped when he saw a young man, also a veteran, curled up in a doorway. The man's eyes were weary, lost. Eli knelt, locking eyes with him. Eyes that had once been his own. "I've been where you are," he said, gently extending a hand. "And I can show you the way forward, if you're ready to take the step." 1 year after the events at Red Rail Diner, Riverbrook had transformed. Once a town that cast out the vulnerable, it had become a national model for veteran support and community reintegration. That morning, under warm sunlight, Hundreds gathered for the grand opening of the Turner Veterans Community Center, a former factory refurbished into transitional housing, a counseling center, and vocational training facilities. No one forgot the journey it had taken. And now, the nation was writing the next chapter, not just one of conflict, but of healing. The Turner Center, now the symbol of Riverbrook's rebirth, included transitional apartments, a dedicated mental health counseling center, and a specialized clinic serving veterans. During the opening ceremony, Q, now fully recovered from injuries sustained in the police raid, led the event from his wheelchair. Around him stood after-school program kids wearing shirts emblazoned with Veterans for Justice. "Today we're not just opening a building," Q told the crowd, voice thick with emotion. "We're witnessing the birth of a movement. A year ago, one man refused to stay silent. Today, thousands stand with him, demanding dignity and justice for those who once fought for us." In the front row sat General Whitaker, now a special advisor to the President's Commission on Homeless Veterans, beside Ava, smiling with pride. Her legal battle against the Shieldmen Network had led to the passage of the Dignity Act, a landmark law providing unprecedented protections for the homeless across the country. Ely stood slightly apart, visibly uncomfortable being the center of attention, yet deeply moved by what he had helped create. Children played on what was once an overgrown lot. Veterans who once hid in the shadows now walked openly through the town, no longer forgotten, but honored. After the ceremony, Rachel approached him with a camera in hand. In the past years, she had transformed from a waitress into a full-time documentary filmmaker. Her stories had illuminated the darkest corners of society. "The premiere is tomorrow," she said, her voice sparkling with excitement. "Tickets sold out early." Her documentary, The Unbowed Veteran, chronicling Eli's journey, Ava's legal battle, and the downfall of Shieldmen, had won awards at 3 film festivals and secured national distribution. The Riverbrook story would never be forgotten. "You coming?" Rachel asked as Eli remained silent. "Absolutely," he replied, though the thought of watching his life unfold on the big screen still unsettled him. "Your work matters, Rachel. It's keeping the fire alive for real change." Rachel gave him a gentle smile. "I couldn't have done it without you." Across town, in a building that once housed the regional office of Falcon Corps, Ava led a new initiative, the Turner Act Legal Network, a specialized support network for homeless veterans wrongfully accused or targeted in small towns, places where injustice often went unchecked. "We're not just handling isolated cases," Ava told her team of eager young attorneys. "We're changing an entire culture. We're making it impossible for corruption to hide, whether behind a police badge or a corporate boardroom door." The impact stretched far beyond Riverbrook. 11 Shieldmen branches had been dismantled nationwide. 8 police chiefs had resigned or faced prosecution. Falcon Corps was under congressional investigation, prompting new regulations on urban redevelopment in vulnerable communities. Doc Holloway, still based in Riverbrook, had opened a clinic focused on PTSD treatment and psychological support for homeless veterans. A place for healing, not just of the body, but of the spirit. That autumn afternoon, Eli Turner quietly walked through the gates of the Turner Community Center, a once-abandoned factory now transformed into a sanctuary for the forgotten. Wearing a dark brown coat, his eyes swept the gathering crowd, not for fame, but for something deeper, the acknowledgement of a community that had once been silent, now finding its voice. In his hands was a small wooden box, unadorned, simple, but filled with meaning. Inside were the dog tags of fallen comrades, those who had once wandered the frozen streets of Riverbrook, now remembered as part of a quiet resistance. A new set of tags was placed inside, those of Officer Barnes. Eli whispered, "Even those who went astray were once good, just lost." It wasn't forgiveness, but remembrance, a reminder that every battle needs both justice and mercy. Not far away, Rachel stood quietly, Her documentary, The Unbroken Veteran, had ignited national outrage and hope. She received letters from across the country, from people once afraid, now finding courage to speak out. One veteran from Texas wrote, "Because of you, I finally told my story. The investigation has begun at the local high school. Eli, despite his dislike for public speaking, had addressed students about courage. When a boy timidly asked if he could become a hero, Eli replied in his warm, steady voice, 'You already are. You just have to listen to your story.'" Nearly 2 years after that fateful night at Red Rail Diner, the final chapter of Shieldman was closed by a Department of Justice order. New reforms, more transparent, more humane, were enacted, and Riverbrook, once feared and forgotten, became a symbol of renewal. One chilly night in late November, Eli Turner walked into the Red Rail Diner for the first time since that defining evening 2 years earlier. The place had been renovated. Warm lighting filled the space with comfort and peace. He sat at his old seat at the counter, where it had all begun. A young waitress approached, her smile genuine. "Can I get you something, sir?" "I'll have the special," Eli replied, eyes sparkling with memory. When she returned with the steaming plate, she added gently, "This one's on the house. Thank you for everything you've done for this town." Eli started to decline, but the sincerity in her eyes made him simply nod in gratitude. The simple meal became something sacred in a town reborn with hope. After dinner, Eli headed to the Veterans Community Center, where a new memorial wall had just been completed. He carefully placed a framed photo of Malik Johnson, his best friend who died in Kandahar, among the others. Children's laughter echoed from the hallway, where a tutoring program had just wrapped. Volunteers chatted as they prepped for the next day's job fair. A group of veterans shared coffee in the common room, their faces reflecting both past pain and present healing. Eli laid a hand on Malik's photo and whispered, "We made it home." It was a message for his fallen friend, but also for everyone who had fought, lost, and now, finally, found hope. Stepping outside, Eli took a deep breath. The air was icy but pure. For the first time in years, the weight of pain and anger no longer pressed on his shoulders. In its place was a sense of fulfilled purpose, wounds slowly healing, a hard-earned peace finally within reach. The sun set over Riverbrook, casting its last golden rays across streets that were once battlegrounds, now pathways toward redemption and renewal. Eli Turner walked home, his steps steady, his head held high, his heart finally finding the light.